Well, we live now.
Yes, we are.
And I like starting on time. It don't always go down that way. But we got all our ducks in a row, and we're going to start this wonderful conversation today with a robust, all-star, award-winning author. I think we got 5 here today. And you know that's difficult to do. But today, we're going to have a cool, awkward, and black conversation about a new book that just came out. It's called Cool, Awkward, and Black. And so we have the editor that's going to moderate today. And we have 4 contributing authors whom contributed to this wonderful new YA anthology that's going to talk about Blackness and Geekiness. Mm-hmm. But before we get to that, I got to do my commercial. So I'm bringing to you one of our productions we done about Malik Books, just to give a little background about what we do and about us. So stay tuned.
You cannot be what you want to be on the sidelines.
Fear will stagnate you, period. Just get out of your own way and keep pushing.
I'm Malik.
And I'm April.
Welcome to Malik Books. Malik Books was something that I think can serve not only my family and me, but also the community, because I want to make a difference and a change in the community by using books, because books change me for the better.
Malik Books give voice to the voiceless.
My grandma walked the streets night and day. When I went to USC, that was the only money I had once a month. She sent me by selling sweet potato pies and KDDs.
Every time I would see her or talk to her, even on the phone, I would cry. It's just words of wisdom that comes out.
She has so many kids that love her because she just had a soul that was so loving. That kind of gave birth to the Crusader Praise Scott Scholarship Fund. I was a sprinter, so I've had junior Olympic champions. I've set national records in track and field. I also was a former Olympian in 1984. Whether it was track, whether it was Malik Books, they all kind of coincide with each other. I just love helping people. We're an African-American independent bookstore that we carry a very large, diverse, and cultural children's book selection, because here at Malik, we believe children are 100% of our future.
We know that the self-esteem grows from here, not here, and that's very important.
You can find a whole different world in books. Today, there's not that many bookstores. So people thank us for being an independent bookstore in the community and taking a chance. Well, the Crusader Praise Scholarship Fund has given over, in the last 5 years, 18 scholarships to freshmen entering college. And the purpose of the scholarship fund is just to help serve those in need. Malik Books is just an extension of our community. What brings me joy is to see someone feel joy from the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, we back. That's a little background about Malik. You know, we got to get our, 2-minute commercial in. Yeah. But today we want to talk about Cool, Awkward, and Black, a new anthology that just came out. This a collaboration, I believe, about 19 authors.
Yep, 18.
18, okay. Mm-hmm. And so we're blessed to have Karen Strong, who edited this book, and she's going to moderate our discussion today. And we have 4 contributing authors who are part of this wonderful YA anthology just came out. Now, everybody here, I believe, works in different professions, but they also award-winning authors. They have other careers and other professions, and they, are sharing their voice to the voiceless. So at this point, let's turn it over to Karen Strong, who's going to introduce. Tell us about you first, Karen, and then talk about
I will. Okay, first of all, thank you so much for having us. We are so happy to be here. It's our pleasure. So my name is Karen Strong, and I am the editor of Cool.Awkward.Black. And I am also an author known for middle grade novels, Eden's Everdark and Just South of Home. And I am very excited to have these superstar contributors talking with me today. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. So y'all can, if you're living under a rock, you probably don't know who these people are, but I don't see how you would not know who these people are, but I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Elise Bryant first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Elise. I have written these books back here. They're young adult rom-coms, Happily Ever Afters, One True Loves, and my next book, Reggie and Delilah's Year of Falling, comes out on Tuesday, a week from today. And I wrote the story, Betty's Best Craft in Cool.Awkward.Black.
Okay. I love that story. Love it. Jordan, tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jordan Ifueko. I'm the author of the Ray Bearer series, and sorry, I'm like switched around in the camera. Comics by Marvel and some more other comics by Jim Henson. I'm trying to point; it doesn't make any sense. My story in the Cool.Awkward.Black anthology is called Spirit Filled, which is about a teenage girl who reads contraband feminist fantasy novels in the Sunday school supply closet of her church.
Love it. Love it. Okay, Kalynn, tell the people.
Hi, I'm Kalynn Bayron. I am a YA and middle grade author. My previous works include Cinderella is Dead, This Poisoned Heart, This Wicked Fate, and The Vanquishers, which is a middle grade. My story in Cool.Awkward.Black is called Nina Evans in the Round, and it is a story about theater and the impact of Black performers in the theater space.
Love it. Love it. And last but obviously not least, Tracy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tracy Deonn, author of the Legend Born Cycle series. This is my first anthology. It's like the Star Wars anthology that Karen and I were both in, just to put the geekiness on full display, where I wrote a story for The Empire Strikes Back, it's from a certain point of view. And then my story in Cool.Awkward.Black is called Catalyst Rising.
Love it. Love it. So this is going to be, like I said, a conversation just to talk about our stories, the stories that are in the anthology, and then just get a little bit information about some crafts, because I know maybe there might be some inspiring writers here. So I'm going to start off with Elise. So Elise, you wrote Betty's Best Craft, which I love. One thing I love about Elise writing is that she is the queen of romance, and she brought her full game to this story. So Elise, tell us about how you determined that Betty was going to be into crafts, and also what is the importance of bringing Faith Ringgold, the artist, into your work in this story?
Yeah. So Betty's into crafts because I'm into crafts. That's definitely like my vein of like nerdiness. I've always been very into just like figuring, embroidery and painting and all sorts of crafts. I love walking around Michael's and getting inspired. And so I actually, when I was a teenager, I remember I had this party, and it was like we invite all these people over, and me and my friend like planned a craft for everyone to do. And then people started showing up, and I remember this one girl, she was like, "Oh, like we're actually doing a craft here. Oh, like there's nothing to drink." Like, and I was like so mortified because I thought that was like a perfectly fine thing for us to do as teenagers at a party. So yes, that just felt right for Betty. And then Faith Ringgold, I love her as an artist, especially her quilts. I think they're just a beautiful way of telling a story. I love the bright colors and the sense of urgency in her work. And so when I was thinking of an artist that Betty could love, it just made sense, because here's an artist who really highlights certain aspects of crafts in her work, and she's celebrated and loved for it. And that's a lot of what Betty is searching for in the story. She feels like she's too much. She feels like she's not cool. And this is an artist that she can admire that made a beautiful career out of that.
I love it. I love it. So I remember when you did the pitch for this story, and I was so excited about it because I'm like, yes, there's a lot of sweet romance stories in here, but this one is definitely one of them. So I really, really love this story so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jordan, so you've already talked about your story. I loved how you were on TikTok. You did a little excerpt of the dramatic reading. And you've spoken about how this is one of the most personal stories that you've written, and that, you really wanted to put that out there. One of the things I love about your story is that you're known for writing luscious, beautiful fantasy, second world fantasy. So I was so excited when you had this pitch because it was a contemporary piece. And it's really, I love that the way that you sort of switched it up for this anthology. So tell us why you wanted to explore these themes in this story. And if you had, how did you face your fears? Because I know you said it was a personal story. So tell us about how you chose this theme.
So I generally start from a place of writing the stories that I needed when I was a teenager. I think I'm in a third place in a lot of different ways. So there's the immigrant aspect. You know, the main character of Spirit Filled, my story, is also a Nigerian American, or the daughter of Nigerian immigrants who lives in Southern California. So there's always the like, not Nigerian enough for Nigerians, not American enough for Americans. And then if you belong to any kind of, if you were raised in any kind of religious setting, you will often be like too secular for your religious group, but too religious for a secular environment. And on top of that, if your parents, like mine, were so horrified at secular influence that they insisted on you being homeschooled until high school, then you are piecing together what reality is, what the real world is, from any piece of media you get access to, any new person you get access to, because you have this really controlled environment, right? So there were very few pieces of media that really thread the needle for me on this is me, this is what I can relate to, because that's so specific. And so that's, you know, part of what inspired the Rayberry series is just like, oh, I was this kid with a bunch of imagination, lots of cultural influences. So what if there was a world where all of those cultural influences were there? And I guess this on a kind of micro scale is what I wanted to do with Spirit Filled, is like, you know what? As weird as I felt, I know there are other cool, awkward Black teen girls now who are being raised in an environment exactly like mine, who feel like aliens in their environment because they don't match any stereotype or even archetype of a Black girl that they see in media anywhere. And so I'm going to write about girls that thread this very specific needle, because why not? Maybe they'll find.
Why not? Yeah. And I looked at some of the comments that you had, you know, after you did your reading of the thing, and there were so many people who related to that. And even when I was editing the story, I knew that this was going to touch a lot of different people. And because, I mean, I grew up in the church myself. And so I was nodding my head like, So yeah, I really do love your story as well. So now we're going to go to Kalynn. So Kalynn also is like Jordan in a way. She's known for her prose, her I'm sorry, y'all. I am still tired, but she's known for her prose, but she's also known for her fantasy. And she also did another sort of pivot. So Kalynn, talk about why did you decide to set your story in the 70s? And also, what is the impact of theater for you? Because I don't think a lot of people know some people know your background. So talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so I'm a theater nerd at heart. I fell in love with theater kind of watching screen adaptations of popular musicals when I was a kid. Annie was my favorite. I'm an 80s baby, so Annie was popular. The first live theater show I ever saw was Sweeney Todd, which probably says a lot about who I have become as a person. But theater has always been something that's really close to my heart. And I studied opera in college. So it's always been there. It's always been something that I really enjoy. But I think we tend to think of the theater community as this very kind of welcoming space where people who feel like outsiders can kind of find a safe place to exist. But you know, it's not called the Great White Way for nothing. It is a space that, like many other spaces, has had and continues to have an issue with racism. And so in '74, The Wiz opened in Baltimore, and then it moved to Broadway in '75. And it won 7 Tonys the year that it came out. But behind closed doors, people were kind of talking about it like it was a fluke. So, you know, it was a really challenging time for Black performers and Black creatives. And even now, when we kind of talk about the golden age of theater, of Broadway, people are mostly referring to the time period between like 1943 and 1965, and there's a reason for that. So I wanted to set this story kind of right in the center of this other time period that was this space where Black performers were really getting their shine. And I really just wanted to have this sense through our main character's eyes, Nina, of the impact of seeing someone like Stephanie Mills performing as Dorothy in The Wiz for the first time, and how that inspired her, and a whole new kind of generation of Black performers.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really loved about your story. It sort of like gave a snapshot of how it was back then, and a lot of things have changed, but just like with publishing, you know, things still have a lot of things that we could improve. And one of the things I really also loved about your story is that I love the way you have your different characters. You always have a group of people, and they always riff off each other. And so that's one of the things I loved about that story too. It's a different genre that most people know you for, but it's still a Kalynn story, which I love. So it was so fun to edit for sure. Okay, so Tracy, you are well known for writing beautiful, strong heroines such as Brie Matthews, and you sort of like did the sort of same thing in your story, Callous Rising, with your character Petra. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with her character makeup and how her character makeup like affected your premise.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this last week. I think probably my Black girl protagonists are all going to be of a certain type that they could all potentially be friends if they were all to meet. So they're going to have some things very much in common. Petra is a high school girl who really loves like hard science. She loves chemistry. And I think with this story, I really brought in a little bit of my high school self. There was a period of my life where I thought the first job I ever thought I was going to have would be a writer. It was tied a little bit neck and neck with veterinarian.
Really?
But as a high school student, I was really still exploring this sort of science side, biology, chemistry. I wondered if that was actually my path. Decided it wasn't. I'm glad that I did that, but I still have a passion for it. And I think a lot of that actually comes from my mother, who in this story, there's a relationship between Petra, the main character, and her mother that we get hints at, where we can tell there might be similarities. We don't know a bunch about her. But my mother was a hard scientist, like biology major, chem minor, organic chem, like working in the lab, working in the field. So like I was raised by someone who really enjoyed storytelling and really enjoyed genre. And I say I'm my second generation fangirl, but really her like work and her passion was in hard numbers and data and hypotheses and testing and experimentation and laboratory work. Like that was really where a lot of her passion was. So I think there's a little bit of that going on here but of course I'm a genre person. So it's really sci-fantasy. And this is my ability I took this opportunity to dabble in sci-fantasy, which I have a passion for as well.
Yeah, I love it. So I think that what I love again about this anthology is that it is providing all different types of genres. And the only connection really are these Black teens that are in their own way to the outside world maybe felt like they're awkward, but really they're not. They're being themselves. And from what I've been hearing from a lot of the readers, I've received so many heartfelt messages of people seeing these Black teens in all these different intersections, all of these different ways of being Black, queer, trans, all of these different relationships that they have with each other. And I think that for the four of y'all in particular, I think that your stories are really reaching out to people, not only Black teens, but other non-Black readers who need to see Black teens in this story, in this way. So I just want to say thank y'all. Y'all put your foot in these stories. So now I'm gonna just open up to some casual conversation. So I know I had said, since this is a short story anthology, so do y'all have a favorite short story? I'll go first. And then and if you don't have one, don't worry about it. But if you do, I would love to know why you love it so much. For me, my favorite short story is The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, because it's just so, I know, Kalynn, you feel me, right? It's just so brutal, and it's so much in such a short amount of space. So Jordan, do you have a favorite short story?
I'm going to be super controversial and say that most of my favorite short stories are probably pieces of fan fiction.
Hey, look.
I even though I don't even read that much fan fiction these days, I read a lot when I was a late teenager, early 20s. And what I love about the ability of short pieces of fan fiction, obviously there are novel-length pieces of fan fiction too, is that it can take one aspect, one beloved aspect from a broader universe and just focus on it, like just hone down on it. These don't technically count as fan fiction because they're written by the author, but I love when there is a paperback released of a beloved book and the author will write a short story in the back. It's like sometimes a brief epilogue or talks about like a certain scene from another character's perspective. I don't know. I love the ability to focus and to see the stories within this story. Like there was the big arc of the adventure, but even the like small misunderstanding between the romantic interests, like, you know, classic hurt comfort fanfiction. That's the whole story in and of itself, right? So short stories can bring a lot of dignity to even small stake conflict. And I feel like that's the kind of conflict that a lot of us experience. You know, we have our big narrative conflicts having to do with the isms and, you know, the traumas. And then we have like, man, I really didn't like when my romantic interest missed this important birthday party and I feel so hurt and now I have to be comforted and stuff like that. So those are my short stories.
No, I love fic. I love reading fic. I that's not controversial, Jordan.
You know what? In this crowd, it isn't.
Okay, all right. What about you, Elise? Do you have a favorite short story?
I was trying to think of it. I don't remember. It's by Lamar Giles. I don't remember what the book it was in. It was like a book about love triangles or something, and I don't remember the name of the story.
Oh, yeah, like
I just remember like
of a Heart. I think that's the name of the anthology.
That anthology. And I just remember like how it made me feel when I was reading it, because like we all know, because we've done it now, writing these stories, it's so hard to get like that complete arc, believable characters, those feelings that you can convey in a story. But I remember I just remember how I felt when I read it, and I like threw the book down because it had such a twist in it that I was not expecting, especially not expecting in such a short period of time. And that just like, it's lingered with me. And that was the first thing I ever read by Lamar Giles. And then I of course went and like found everything by him, and I'm like obsessed with him now. And and he's in this book.
He is.
Yeah.
Drive Time is a trip. It is so hilarious. He has his sense of humor off the. He's. We need to all like go out. I really hope we all get to meet each other again. I've only met him once or twice, but yeah, he's funny and he's very, very talented.
Yeah, very talented.
Yeah. Okay, Kalynn. I know me and you, we had a moment when I said the lottery, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's the lottery. Yeah, it's everything Shirley Jackson. It is, that story specifically is just so horrifying. And
yeah.
we don't have hardly any information. We have the box and we have this crowd of people, and we know that something terrible is about to happen as readers. And it's a masterclass in short story writing. It is my favorite short story. A second, like, maybe tied with that, it's probably more of a novella, but The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval is also incredible. So yeah, those are my favorites.
Yeah, that is going to be a TV series, if I'm not mistaken, I think. So I'm looking forward to that. I love that novella too. What about you, Tracy? You have a favorite short story?
I'm sure I do, but I always blank on these questions. Real talk. It doesn't matter how much time you give me in advance. It doesn't matter. In the moment, I'm like, I don't know. The one that I just read, I'm just very simple like that. But I will say, but I love Jordan's answer about fanfic because I love talking about fanfic a lot, and I would add to that answer in that, like, I think the thing that I very much love about fanfic from a not just from a reader perspective, but reading as a writer, or even writing as a writer. It's been since I've written any fanfic, but I just love that it gives you such explicit fandom, and fanfic in general gives you such explicit freedom to focus on a very critical area of craft. And so if you understand, typically speaking, that like you're writing for a fandom or you're writing for an audience, you would be if you're publishing it. Not everybody posts their fanfic. I'm a big fan of writing it and not showing anybody. But like you write and you know that there's some assumption, you can make some safe assumptions about what your audience knows. And then you can play with a piece of craft, whether it's dialogue or like Jordan said, a moment of conflict that maybe is just like this small, but you get to play in all dimensions, or you get to play with one trope and like see what that does to the characters. Like I just love the freedom and the permission of fandom in that way, and for writers and readers to be able to like dig into it. I think that's really a comfortable place to go and get like a short snippet when you're in that mood. And just there's something really beautiful about the fanfic sort of craft of like a one shot, which is this idea that like we're not doing a chapter thing, we're doing just like one moment. Let's get it done. And I love how one shots can sometimes be like 50,000 words, and I'm like, friend, you might have cheated, but there's something about like, really focusing and just like saying like, I'm here to do this one, like it's almost like taking a very long breath, like it's just one exploration and get that all done. So I think that's what I would add to the conversation, and that's probably what I'm looking for in my short stories too, is I'd rather a short story go small than broad.
Yes.
Like to really take advantage of the form.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like cliffhanger stories, short stories. I have written two. So, but I feel like that sort of like a cliffhanger is almost like delving into fan fiction. It gives the reader a chance to imagine what happens after that last few words or in the short story. And so I also like slice of life, just characters just doing stuff like eating dinner or going to the flower shop or something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be something like very, very traumatic or something, even though I love that stuff too. But yeah, I love these answers. Learning a lot about y'all. So
I feel like I want to do like a coffee shop.
You want to do a coffee shop
one day? Yeah, just like take advantage of that trope and that like setting. It does so much. They're like,
your characters need a break anyway, so that would be great for them.
That's true.
They need a break.
They would love for me to write them in a coffee shop.
I would want that for them. So just talking, I mean, all of us are novelists first by trade. So I would love to know, and I can answer this first, and then I can just we can riff off this. So what do you feel is the biggest difference between a novel and a short story? I'll go first. I think I think for me, when it comes to a novel versus a short story, is that a short story for me is a moment in time or a very specific change in the character's POV or outlook on life. Where a novel to me is you have room to breathe, right? You have room to like, you can go on little tangents or whatever. But for me, a short story is a moment in time. Jordan, what do you think for you is the biggest difference between the two?
I think that's really difficult because there are so many kinds of short stories.
Yeah.
There are kinds that are moments in time.
Yeah.
There are kinds I've really liked contemporary fairy tale retellings of short stories. Someone who does a lot of that is T. Kingfisher. One of my favorite short stories of hers is a retelling of Bluebeard. If anyone knows the fairy tale Bluebeard, it's about a young woman who is married to a wealthy old man who tells all of his wives that they can't, touch this key and they can't see where the key goes. And then he leaves the house and they always do. And he comes back and finds out and, murders them because they should have been obedient. And her short story, I forget what it's called, is about a wife who's just like, oh, okay, then you should take the key with you. Don't leave the key with me. I don't need to know your secrets. And he's like, but don't you want the test, the key? And she's like, no, I don't care. And so the whole short story is about what does that fairy tale look like when the wife is so content with her own life that she doesn't feel any need to pry into like her husband's deep, dark secrets. And it goes through their marriage over the course of years. And this is a short story, right? And it manages to encapsulate all of that in maybe like 3,000 words. Like it's really interesting. But all that to say, sorry, this is always just an opportunity for me to nerd out about stuff I've read that I like. But
that's why we're here, to nerd out.
What I would say is a big difference between a short story and a novel is word economy. I have noticed that people who are good at writing short stories are usually really good at poetry, where every single word packs a punch. Whereas with novels, even though you can write them that way, and those novels are powerful, you can also write them in a way that mimics human speech, especially if you have a narrator whose voice you are trying to establish. They might ramble, they might have clip sentences, they might do this and that, and that's part of the storytelling. Whereas with short stories, while you can do that, it's more likely that you're going to try and make every single word have that impact in the same way of a poem. At least that's what I aspire to. It was definitely a challenge for me because, as you mentioned, Karen, I am on the, fantasy.
I was impressed. I was really impressed. I was like, look at Jordan writing this short story.
That's a cheat though, because since she's reading a fantasy novel, I got to still write those lines of text, and so
I love it. I love it. What about, and see, that's why I wanted to ask y'all this question, because the beautiful thing about being writers and novelists is that everyone does it different. And so I'm really interested to see how y'all feel the difference between novels and short stories. What about you, Kalynn? What do you think the biggest difference is?
Yeah, for me, I think it's in the delivery. I think it's the shorter the story, it's more of a challenge for me. I think there's sometimes very little room for filler or, exposition. And I think it's a really great tool for really making sure that your words are impactful. And for me, it kind of translates over into my novel writing because I'm writing these very short drafts now, and everything is kind of packed in there and condensed. I think it makes me a better writer, but like you said, there's a little more room to breathe in novel writing. But the short story is, you can really make it sing. You can make those words sing. I'm writing a picture book right now, and it is 350 words total. And it is the hardest. It is one of the most challenging things that I've ever done. So I think that it's about just making the words count. And of course we do that in novel writing. We want to do that with all of our words, but there's just something about that short story format. For me, it just feels like a wonderful type of challenge. Yes. I have 5,000 words. I have to get this story down, and it has to be impactful, and it has to be, it has to have all of these things kind of condensed, and it's just a challenge. But I love writing short stories.
Yes, and you are the short story queen. You are writing them, honey. You are definitely writing them. What about you, Tracy? What do you think the biggest difference is?
I think you have a really short amount of time to care about somebody and
Mhm.
like make, novelists, and I think this changes with form and category. So like I think YA, the clock, the ticking clock of like how much time you have, how many pages you have to convince your reader to care about this person is different than an adult, is different than middle grade picture book. I don't even know. I can't even wrap my head around that. But I think short stories are really like they're an interesting sort of space to be able to be like, and it's not just the protagonist, I would say. Like this is about other characters too. So you might, a side character, this is something that I really love doing even in my novels, is just like let's give them 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, but then 2 or 3 details about what they look like, how they talk, or like a sort of a body behavior that they can't help but do. And that can sometimes give you all the information you need to sort of paint a picture of somebody. And so then you, as a reader, are able to fill in the gaps as you go along because you have a really cool skeleton that's like solid of that person in right when you meet them. Short story, all of that is collapsed, and that's about everybody. That's not just your secondary or your tertiary characters. That's like literally everyone that you introduce. You have to be economical, and you have to be able to give a sense of like their full character off the page. And also, why do we care about them? Like, what is their want? And I don't know. It's Kalynn, you're talking, and it made me actually think about the idea that you see in musical theater of like someone's "I want" song, or like in Disney. Like everyone has an "I want" song, and like this is a very specific tool that gets used so that we know exactly, probably repeatedly, what that person wants, so that now we have that in the back of our mind and then we can carry it with them in every scene they do subsequently. So I think of that and like, how do you get the "I want" for that character in that amount of time? It almost has to be on like the second page or first.
Yeah, it has to be very, very, like you said earlier, you don't have a lot of time to let someone care about these characters. You have to, and that's why I think it's such a challenge, but it's really worth it. So it's worth it. What about you, Elise?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna repeat a lot of what everyone is saying. Yeah, because I'm such an overwriter. My drafts are always way too long. I
don't know you. I don't know it. I'm an underwriter.
So in order to, it's much more challenging for me to have to limit myself to only a few thousand words because there's no time to linger in the characters. My characters ramble a lot in their thoughts and in their speech. And so it's hard to get that all into a short story. And then I write love stories. So like, how do you make love between these two people? How do you make them like, how do you care about the people, but then also make their love feel real and authentic in just a few thousand words? It's been a real challenge for me. And I like, right when I'm working on my novels, I can pound out 1,000, 2,000 words easily. But then like last summer, I was working on a short story for another anthology, and it took me an entire month to write like a 4,000 word short story that 4,000 words would be like a couple days if I'm working on my novel. But it was like what you were saying, Jordan, like each word has to matter. Like each sentence has to mean something. And it's hard for me to limit myself. Yeah.
No, I think since most of you are known as novelists, I really, from a craft perspective, I think the way each of you approached your short story, it was interesting just to see, like from the draft to the first pass revision to the second pass revision. It was just amazing to see how, based on the editorial comments, how you were able to just focus and cut and do all the things to make that story sing. Short stories are very difficult to write. So, and as novelists, I think it might be a little bit more difficult because we're so used to having that room to run. So I think each of you did a wonderful job. I personally cannot wait until more readers get their hands on these stories. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. This is called Cool.Awkward.Black. I think I'm finally awake now, so I'm more alert. So What is the most geekiest thing about you? What would you consider other people would say it's awkward, but you personally think it's cool? I'm gonna let you go first, Elise. What do you no pressure. What do you think is the most geekiest thing about you?
Well, I mean, I already told you about my
Well,
craft parties. I tried to have
craft parties
as a teenager. No, I mean, I think we already talked about fan fiction. Fan fiction was definitely like one of my nerdiest things growing up. I used to spend hours alone in my room just writing boy band fan fiction and making the boy band members I like fall in love with me and then posting it online. So I don't know, that's what I'm willing to tell you today, the nerdiest thing about me.
Yeah, we don't need you to put your whole business in the street. So yeah, that's fine. That's fine. What about you, Kalynn? What do you think is the geekiest thing about you?
I don't know. I mean, I could tell you what it was for me when I was younger. Probably the most awkward. Oh man. Yeah, I'm gonna say it out loud. So, when I was 13 when Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet came out, and it took over my life, and I became obsessed, and I started to read Shakespeare and memorize lines, and I wrote a story, like it was fan fiction, Romeo and Juliet, but it was like Romeo, Juliet, and Mercutio were all in love with me, and you couldn't tell me nothing. And so that's probably the most awkward. And then my friends are looking at me like, what is really going on over here? They're very concerned. And I still love that movie, and I still love Shakespeare, and I love theater, and I love all those things. So, I just feel like all those things are kind of geeky and awkward, and I'm okay with that.
I love that. Oh, I can see little teenage Kalynn typing up these stories. It's so cute. I love it. Okay, Tracy, I think I might know, but it could be teenager too. It doesn't have to be now. But what do you know? What do you think is the geekiest thing about you?
I'm thinking back like when I was really young. I mean, I think the immediate geeky thing that it comes to mind that I recognize was slightly different, perhaps, than how my friends were engaging with media, is that I would watch a movie or a TV show or something and immediately have to go get the score, not the soundtrack, right? Like I needed the score because I wanted to live in that story. And so I just remember a friend of mine came over and was like, you remember how you used to have those like CD binders and you could like open them up and it would be like all your disc. And then there was in the back, you could put the jewel case, like paper where it was like lyrics or whatever. So I had that and they were like, oh yeah, let me see your music, come over. Cause that's how you could get to know somebody and like see their music. And he just got really quiet and he was just like, what? Why do you have the Jurassic Park score just chilling? Why do you? And I was like, good. It's fantastic. What are you talking about? This is John Williams. Like I had the Superman score. Like I had the score to Speed, the movie. I was really into Speed. I needed to have that. Yeah. So I just think that there was a period of my life when I was open about it and I didn't realize that was something that someone would be like, your taste in music is. I think he literally was like, it's really bad. I like you. Like, but like, what is this? Like, this is not great. Do you have other songs? Like, and I was like, no, this is what I got.
I tell you. Yep. It's too funny. Jordan, how are you going to follow that up? So
follow it up by saying, me too. I also collected soundtracks and scores to movies. I right now, if anyone's curious, I write to the score of a video game called Cult of the Lamb, and it's really great. You might like it. The nerdiest thing, like that's impossible. Like it's more like you have to take like, a just cut out a little part as a sample of all the things about me that are awkward and nerdy. And that sample I'm going to give you is that the first thing I ever got published was an 8-part retelling of Pride and Prejudice on neopets.com, in which all of the cast, Darcy, Elizabeth, you name it, were different Neopets, and you can still Google it to this day. 14-year-old Jordan's master.
Somebody's gonna Google that now. You know that.
Instances on Neopets. It is still there.
Do you remember who everybody was?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember who everybody was? Like, who was the Elefante? Like, do you remember like the
oh
little...
yeah, no. So Darcy was this loop. You know, the loop was the wolf Neopet, and Darcy was a loop named Stormington III. Elizabeth was one of my Neopets. Her name was Lindsay Maher. I didn't actually name her. I adopted her from the pound. So the main character is Lindsay. I am also in this fanfic because I'm their owner. I'm Lindsay's owner. So I'm like, you go girl, go get your man. That is, and this is 14. So already I had to have read Pride and Prejudice enough times to be familiar enough with it to recreate this. And I had to be familiar enough with the world of Neopets to like, okay, so the ball would actually be them playing this Neopets game. And like, it's, I feel like that speaks for itself. I have always been this person.
I love you though. I love it. I love it. And y'all are doing things that are not like harmful. Like I think I'm thinking about when I was a teenager, I like breaking things out, breaking things down and putting them back together. Like I think it was maybe the civil engineering or whatever engineering. I used to like tear apart the dishwasher or the laundry, the dryer, washer and dryer, and try to figure out how to put it back together. But that's just me. So I don't know. Mine was a little bit more dangerous than you guys. So so I don't know if we have time to do some Q&A. Do we have any Q&A questions from the audience? I'm not sure.
In the chat.
Well, the only comments we have is people just enjoying the conversation. Okay. And y'all talking about something that they can relate to.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So if anybody wants to ask, like if anybody watching wants to ask a question, they can. In the meantime, I'm gonna talk about. I'm gonna ask.
I'd like to ask a quick question.
Okay, sure.
What was the inspiration to write this collaboration, and who inspired it?
That's a great question. So it was a group effort, actually. One of my agents for this anthology, my literary agents, her name is Jenia Carter. She actually came up with the premise of having an anthology that talks about Black geekdom and Black fandom. And they thought that I would be the perfect editor for this project, which makes sense because I am a geek. I am a software geek, I'm a science geek, I'm a tech geek, I'm a Star Wars geek. So once we figured out what we thought the premise was going to be, we decided to start reaching out to different people. I slid in some DMs like, hey, y'all think y'all want to be in this? And we formally sent out an email to everyone. And the beauty of it is that everyone said yes, which is great. I mean, I personally don't think that I could get all of y'all again because all y'all are superstars now, and I don't think y'all have time. So it was just the perfect storm of getting all of these superstar contributors together to bring these stories to y'all.
Well, that's amazing because a lot of the contributors are award-winning authors. They have solid careers in other areas and as an author. And, this is one of the, most inspirational books. And to be on this conversation today, I'm outnumbered because it's 6-1. That is cool. I had to ruin that, right?
But I think
a lot of energy, a lot of female energy here.
But yeah, I think this anthology, I think the reason why these contributors wanted to write stories for this anthology, because I think all of the contributors who work in this industry, they know the importance of Black teens being the center of the story. And there's a lot of things that are happening now that when we see more Black teens as center stage in stories, we see Black teens on covers, we see Black teens not being the sidekick, but being the actual main character of a story. And all of these contributors they work in their own work and their novels and just being talking to the readers, they understand the importance of having that reflection to the readers. They know the power of identity on a page. And I think that is probably the best like incentive for them to have wanted to be involved in this anthology. I personally think that from just the messages that I've had in the last 2 weeks since this anthology has come out, I know that this anthology is touching lives because for the first time, some of these people are seeing themselves in stories. Not that these stories are the first of its kind, but I think to have it in this particular package where you can have a taste of all different types of Blackness and intersections is very powerful for the readers.
Absolutely, because like we like to pride ourselves at Malik Books. We give voice to the voices. Y'all giving voice to a silent voice where people, stick to themselves and stay to themselves. And now you giving to, a way to empower their voice. And so that's a wonderful collaboration that you came out with. We do have some questions. They stocking them now.
I have a question from Ray.
Okay.
And the question is, what would happen if your MCs from your short stories met up?
Does anybody want to talk about that? Well, as the editor of the anthology, I personally would love for the characters in the story by Arsenault Rivera. She has a Dungeons and Dragons story called can't think of the top of my head, but she has a Dungeons and Dragons story, and Tochi Onyebuchi has another story in it where he's actually talking about his characters actually going literally inside of his stories. And so the stories are sort of similar. So I would love for them to get together and go on some kind of like virtual adventure. So I don't know if the contributors have been able to read all the stories, but I really do think, Elise, I think that your characters in your story and the characters in Leah Johnson's story, Corner Booth, I think y'all should go on a double date.
I haven't read Leah's story yet, but that doesn't surprise me because I feel like we're always writing in conversation with each other. So that makes me happy.
I have another question from Aaron Smith. This is to Kalynn. They're reading Cinderella is Dead, and they wanted to know what was your inspiration of writing?
So Cinderella is Dead is my kind of I love fairy tales as a kid. But like I said, I'm an 80s baby. I didn't have a Black princess until Princess Tiana, and I was grown when that came out. And so I wanted to do a retelling of a really popular fairy tale. Cinderella is very visible. Everybody kind of knows that story, even if you've never read some of the original versions of it, or if you've never seen the Disney movie, but we all know that story. And I wanted to place a queer Black girl at the center of this Cinderella story. I wanted to have a conversation about what it means when the popular media is telling you that you need to, find a man and get married and ride off into the sunset, and what happens when you don't want anything to do with that. So that was kind of my inspiration. I wrote it in 2016. I was watching a lot of Once Upon a Time. So that was a big inspiration for me. So yeah, it was all of those things. It's the story that my 15, 16-year-old self would have wanted to read.
Wow. Well, does any author would like to also tell us what's your inspiration becoming, an author and a writer? There are a lot of things you could have done, but why write?
That is a good question. Does anybody want to answer that one? I can go first. I know for me, I did not start off as wanting to be an author, did not want to be a writer at all. Actually, I came to writing very late. I'm a reader first. I'm an avid reader. So basically, I fell in love with books, and I love books so much that I decided to become a writer, because one of the things that I've noticed is that there was a dearth of Black girls in fiction?
It's something that I mentioned briefly. Books were how I made sense of the world and connected with it in a fairly isolated environment. And so I've wanted to write stories pretty much for as long as I knew what stories were. My parents would tell me stories, and then I would make up stories to tell back to them. Like, I can do that too. I don't remember this, but my aunts tell me about like mention me sitting in the booth of a restaurant where I could like barely reach the table, and then like finding like napkins and like pens from people's pockets so I could scribble and write stories while the adults were talking. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and it's something that I never doubted that I could do. It almost felt a little bit like being insane, where I was like, I know that Black girls should be the protagonist of stories, so why don't I see them? That's so strange.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's always felt very organic for me.
Wonderful.
I love that.
Yeah, I like that. Do some of you write in some of your writings a character of like an angry Black woman?
I think we might all have have a yes to that. I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. That, like, when I was conceiving of my debut novel with Legendborn, I knew that I had a character who had every right to be angry, and I wanted to, in multiple reasons. She has a list, and I knew that I wanted her anger and her emotional core to drive all of her decision making. And I wanted her, I talk about this as like the engine. I wanted her emotional state and her anger and her grief and her frustration and her love, all of those things to be the engine behind the book. And that if you take away her anger, if you were to try and extract the anger of this main character, of this main Black girl from, if you were to take it away, that I wanted to write a book where the whole book would fall apart. So I kept sort of imagining, like, what are the ways in which her anger is actually intrinsic and super necessary? And like, would she reach her goals if she wasn't angry? Like, I asked those types of questions as I was writing about, like, we talk about agency and like the characters having the ability to make choices and to make moves in the book and propel the story forward. But I was like, what if all of her agency is connected to her age? And if we take that away, then I would like to have written a story where like the whole thing would just fall flat. Like, she wouldn't reach her goals. She wouldn't have pushed the right people to get answers. She wouldn't, get to the end of the book triumphant. So I wanted it to be necessary. The same way about her Blackness. I wanted like her anger and her Blackness to be so necessary that if you take it out, the story makes no sense.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the trope of an angry Black woman is not a negative trope, because Black women, there's a lot to be angry about. So I think that, having these types of stories showing Black girls and women actually showing their righteous anger, it's actually a beautiful thing.
It is. And by the way, Tracy, my daughter, she's 15. She read both of your books already.
I appreciate her.
You guys talked about being a reader, and that she is a reader. She rereads and she snarkles and laughs. And I look in the barrel, what you laughing at? She's reading. I was like, okay.
Yeah. I believe she read Kalynn's books as well.
Yeah. I mean,
during the pandemic.
Yeah, she should read all of these for authors who write young adult. So you should definitely get all of their stories. And if you have any young ones, they can read some of my middle grade. So there's definitely, what I love about this time of this present time that we're having right now in publishing is that we have so many up and coming Black authors who have so many different stories to tell. I think in the past, it's not because there weren't any Black writers. It was because of the roadblocks and the gatekeepers that were keeping us out of the business. Yes. But now I think we're seeing that we are having more types of stories. But here's the thing, with everything going on now with the book banning and everything else, it's disproportionately affecting us as BIPOC and queer and Black authors. And so we have to still be very aware that we have still a lot to do. And in order for us to keep having these stories coming out into the world, we have to have people support us. And we have to have people buying our books.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Jordan, someone wants to know the name of that love triangle short story.
Love triangle short story.
Oh, I think that was the one I said.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
It's by Lamar Giles. I'll remember it in like an hour.
Yeah. The anthology, I think, is Three Sides of a Heart.
Yes, that's what it's called. It came out when I was still teaching, so a long time ago. I read it, but I still remember how I felt, even till this day.
Yeah. If you look up Lamar Giles, his website, he has all of his short stories on one of his pages. So if you go there, you'll definitely see it there on his website.
I'm gonna hijack this, even though people weren't asking me about my short story. The short story fanfic I was thinking of when I talked about it is called Magic in the Moonlight. Magic in the Moonlight is a fan fiction about Tiana and Naveen from Princess and the Frog the day after they get married. And she's having all kinds of doubts about whether she can be a princess. And Naveen is like, of course you can be a princess. I love you. So go ahead and read that.
I mean, so much to Google, so much to search.
Yeah, you can feel the passion in your writing. You can hear it. You can feel it. Y'all love what y'all do, and y'all were born to do this because this occupation ain't easy as writers.
No, it's not.
Most writers don't make it. So y'all done something that most didn't accomplish, and y'all winning awards. Y'all books are on the shelf. We got all of y'all books pretty much on our shelves because that's what we do. We curate African American and diversity books and been doing it since the 90s. And so we love to see the growth and all the new authors just blossoming now. It didn't get here overnight. It was a process. Yes. We had to have fortitude and we had to keep amplifying our voices. Black people buy books and other people love to read books written by Black people. And
So I know we're at time. So are there any other questions for the audience, or are we good? Or
it's one more here.
Okay.
Sure.
I have another one. I'm writing an early reader. Do you have any advice on particulars on how to write a UA novel?
So
YA. I'm sorry, a YA
novel. Okay. We have some YA novelists here. So basically, the question is, they're asking what are the steps?
Any advice on?
Any advice? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it. That's an open-ended question. So
yeah, I was gonna say read. I mean, you think most of us are are readers and love reading, but like part of the job, and especially if part of what you want to do is to publish in today's current industry, which again, you can be a writer all day and all night and you don't have to publish. Choosing to publish is an active decision to put your work out there for a wider audience, and that reading audience that is out there right now, which means you need to be reading what the industry is putting out right now. You need to be reading what your readers are reading right now. And that's just something that I feel like is very easy to assume is just going to happen naturally, but it really doesn't. Like, we all have to make choices about how we spend our time and what we read and how much we read. And we have to be proactive about understanding what's going on. And that's because publishing is a business and your book will become a product. And you have to understand what the business and the industry and the product are about. If that's not your thing, then that's totally fine. And you can still be a writer writing great things and publish other ways. You can indie publish, you can publish fanfic. Like, I mean, like, so it's one thing that I always tell people is like, you're a writer if you love writing, if you've written before, and you're going to do it again. When you aspire to be an author, then you're opening the door into an industry, and that takes a different type of homework, a different type of attention, different type of support network.
Anybody have anything to add? Okay.
Wants to piggyback on that
one. Ms. Deonn pretty much said it all. I mean, it's very true. It's one thing here. I think if for any inspiring authors that are on this live stream, is like being a writer and writing the story is a separate thing from being in the business and being in the business of publishing. They're two separate things. And I think going in knowing this can make it a little bit easier, because you basically need two skill sets. You need to have a business mindset in addition to your creativity. And so going in and knowing that will help you. And also knowing that you have your creativity, that's what feeds you as far as your inner self and what you want to have. You cannot let publishing feed you, because if you let publishing feed you, you're going to be up one day and then you're going to be down the next day. And so you have to have an internal you have to have it. It's very important to have an internal compass of what you consider what is success. Because if you don't have that internal compass of what success is, this is a hard business. And so going to sleep, for me, I can only speak for myself. Internal compass for success for me is knowing that I wrote the best book at the time. And I can go to sleep at night knowing that I did that, no matter what happens when the book becomes a product.
I think one thing that has really resonated with me since becoming a published author is actually a line from Evita, the musical, which is brutal. It's you won't care if they love you. It's been done before. You'll despair if they hate you. And that's what it's like. If you hear good things about your book, you'll be like, okay, cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And if you hear bad things, it'll be like, it'll ruin your day. And I think that's what any kind of like broad exposure of yourself and your work is like, is that even the praise you begin to doubt or washes over you, and the criticism sticks in you like burrs. And so you have to be writing for something other than validation, because it is not enough. It will never be enough.
It will never be enough. It will never be enough. It will never be enough, because once you hit the list, then you want to get a book deal. Okay, a film deal. Okay, you get a film deal. Then you need to hit a box office success. I mean, if you keep trying to up yourself, you're going to continuously be moving your goalposts. And that's no way to live. You have to write a story because you have a story to tell. And like Tracy said, you don't have to publish it. But if you do publish it, just know that it's a hard business.
And also really like embracing yourself as an audience member, and just saying like, I'm an audience of one, and I'm the audience that I know best. And I'm actually the only one that's going to stick with me this entire ride. So I better make myself happy first, because that's the voice that I'm going to hear. That's the one that's going to be with me throughout the whole career. Because I mean, there's all sorts of ways, like Jordan, what you're saying, like there's all sorts of ways that you can move through this industry and hear feedback from different types of people. And you might never see them again after this one book, but like you yourself, you're going to be with you for the whole experience. And so making yourself happy is so important. So what is it that's going to be able to, keep you going, inspired, and also like what's going to help you sleep at night is writing the best book that you know how to write in the time that you have to do it. Because we're all writing in a context, a certain time of day, year, whatever period of season of our lives. And then like writing that to the best of your ability with the skill level you have. And that's really the only thing that's going to keep you like warm at night, because the publishing, it's just, there's so much, and once you get exposed with your work and you as a person, because you as a person are become a brand in a way. Once that gets exposed to feedback, then you're going to be getting a ton of feedback, and it's going to feel like you're in the middle of a hurricane, and it's really hard to hold on to that. But you got you. And also the other advice I always give is find your people. Find your people who have similar types of goals for their writing, and stick close to them.
Well, hey, I think that's a perfect segue to ending our robust conversation. I really appreciate being a part of this. Meet Malik in April. And so we was, I learned a lot, from just y'all experience. And I learned something about, the love you put into your passion, your craft, and what led to that. So we're grateful to be part of this journey. And we're going to help you sell a lot of copies of your books. You know, we got malikbooks.com. We got a lot of y'all books already on our website, malikbooks.com.
You know,
and we have them inside our store. So we got 2 locations out here in LA. So if you're in town, got to come see us. We in the Los Angeles and Culver City area, but you got to come see us. We'd love come sign your stocks in the store. And hopefully one day in the future, we'll be doing a signing in person at Malik Books. So, but right now, hey, this was conversation about Cool, Awkward, and Black. And you can go to malikbooks.com because we want to sell 1 million copies of their books. Now, we want these beautiful, wonderful ladies to sell millions of copies and be worldwide. So we're going to do our part because you done your part. So we appreciate this conversation. We appreciate every one of you. And we wish you nothing but ultimate success in your careers as an author, as a professional. We thank you.
It's been our pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.